Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here I am, John Sneisen, and don't say we didn't tell you so. Unfortunately, we are being vindicated again because they are facing a recession in South Africa, and we reported on it recently. We reported on it several times recently, and of course you get the usual comments below saying that you're crazy and it'll never happen and all that. We're used to it at this point. We're talking about just basic economic facts. History seems to trigger a lot of people, and so be it. That's the way it's always going to be, no matter how many times we go over this. Going back to 1024 AD, all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. They always have, they always will.
Josh, they've been raised up on mainstream media. What do you believe they will believe?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to convince people who revere their chains so much and love their debt servitude and believe that nothing that central banks and government can do is wrong. They do it for our own good. No, they don't do it for our own good. They are doing it to enslave us in debt. If you shove someone down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, pushing you into perfect servitude to them, right where they want you. And as this article from MoneyWeb out of South Africa says, Rand plunges on recession shock. South Africa slips into technical recession, stocks falter, and as the article goes into, the Rand fell as much as 3% on Tuesday as the economy slipped into a technical recession in the second quarter and missed economists' expectations. Yeah, economists, the academics, wow, it missed their expectations. Who would have thought? It's amazing. Paul Krugman didn't see this coming, John. I guess he didn't see 2008 coming either.
No.
Anyway, going back into the article. At 1600 GMT, the Rand traded 2.82% weaker at R15.30 versus the dollar. The economy contracted by 0.7% in the second quarter, pushing the country into recession after a revised 2.6% contraction in the first quarter, data from Statistics South Africa showed. And I quote, "The economy remains lackluster, partially driven by policy uncertainty. Investment in manufacturing and development has been hampered by uncertainty regarding the mining charter and land redistribution," said Bianca Boats, an analyst at Peregrine Solutions. The contraction was contrary to a Reuters poll of economists predicting a 0.6% expansion. Bonds were also weaker, with the yield of the benchmark government debt due in 2026 up 20.5 basis points to 9.21%, its highest since June 20th, while sovereign dollar bonds sold off across the curve. On the bourse, the blue chip Top 40 index fell 1.42% to 51,691 points, while the all-share index was down 1.4% to 57,892 points. And I quote, "There is a lot of pressure on banks and retailers as expected with such a weak Rand. The emerging market sell-off continuing and the dollar going on a bit of a rampage are also having an effect on our market," said Vasily Gerasi, market trader at BP Bernstein. So, I mean, John, where did South Africa go wrong?
Did you say that their currency went on the Rand page? Yeah, I think you did, Josh. No, sorry. Anyways, terrible joke. Back to some serious stuff, though. I'm just looking at, the value of the Rand over the last 10 years. And have you ever heard about a currency that have dropped, 30% of an average in value over every year, like 30% inflation, so at 300% inflation since 2010, Josh. So that's, since 2008. So that's a lot of, loss in value just there, on top of, all the problems that they have in the economy. And of course, now the stock market has dropped below over a year low back in September. October was this low back in 2017. So we're seeing, they're losing like year over year. They're down. They lost about 3-4%. The people that have been invested in the stock exchange over there, and then of course not to talk about the massive upheaval that's what's happening in South Africa with, coming after the white farmers trying to confiscate land.
Exactly what Zimbabwe did.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So this is the interesting thing, and I wrote an article actually on Steemit, if you can pull it up, if you can find it. It talks.
What's the name of it?
I'll find it for you, Josh, somewhere.
Anyway, I have to edit.
But what it's talking about is what happened when they confiscated land from the white farmers in Zimbabwe. Well, that land had debt attached to it, and that debt collapsed, and then suddenly the banks went bankrupt in Zimbabwe, and they started to have to print massive amounts of money. And then, of course, South Africa is not learning from that, on top of, being indebted. Like, their government is quite indebted as well. It's always increasing, all this debt. Debt is destroying countries all over the world, Josh. And then it's not just one currency, the US dollar or whatever it is. It's everywhere. Wherever debt is not understood and not, kept at bay, people will get into it, because these banksters are, pushing you into your car loan, saying that, oh yeah, don't worry, you'll be able to afford it. You'll get a higher salary. But then the problem is, when your salary drops, you can't afford it anymore. And that's what you're going to see a lot of places. And then, of course, unemployment is starting to come into play, where a lot of people are unemployed in South Africa, of course. And a lot of people are not moving out of South Africa because of the economic, not only the economic calamities, but also the political and so on. So there's a lot of things happening over there that is not good for the economy, and it's really struggling. And the rand is about close to top off where it was in 2016, which was the high, the historical high at 16.17. Well, it's about to just get through there right away.
Yeah, and of course there's headlines coming out about how the recession hands opposition a potential lifeline. See, people are constantly looking to politics for this to change, and it won't change, because this is a issue of global central planning in general, of fractional reserve lending and quantitative easing and all this insanity that we've seen a million times over. And it's like, when is this going to end? You have this problem with the white farmers and the land grabs, which is horrible. And it was horrible when it was done to the Africans as well, the native Africans. And the problem is, people are being driven against each other. It's constantly this divisive tactic, because it works so well for the bankers and governments when people are clashing against each other and attacking each other, divided. And black people are saying, white people get off our land. White people were saying before, black people get off our land. And it's like, people, let's look at people as individual human beings, judge people by the content of their character, what they do with their life, what they do to others, what they do for others, rather than get involved in this massive collectivist division tactic by governments, these organized crime rackets, to drive people against each other. And then what do you have? You have people clashing instead of focusing on the real problem, the real enemies. And the real enemies are those that are pushing you into poverty. The real enemies are those that are ripping money out of your pocket and saying that it's for the greater good of the greater number, while putting it towards horrible things, inefficient things, things that you never asked for under the so-called social contract. Folks, this is a problem with central banking. This is a problem with government. This is a problem with everything being on the social contract. The government, this organized crime racket, saying that they know what's best for you, and that, the majority puts guns to the minority and says, we know what's best for you, so you must follow our way. No good idea requires force. And if you say it does, then it probably isn't a very good idea. I mean, people say, well, the vast majority of the public is stupid. So you want the vast majority of the public to put guns to your head and tell you what you should do with your own life, or else be thrown in a cage, kidnapped, or killed by this organized crime racket that people for some reason give fuel to, called government and banks? Look, folks, when it comes down to it, we have this massive complex, the central banking system, which is pushing people into debt servitude left and right. And as long as we continue this tactic, it doesn't matter what puppet you put in office in a suit and a tie. It doesn't matter. No matter what, it'll always end in the same way. As we saw in Zimbabwe, as we saw in the Weimar Republic, in Venezuela, what we're seeing in Argentina right now, what we've seen in Croatia, what we've seen all around the world, a couple hundred times over. I mean, when will it end? Folks, focus on yourself, be responsible, educated, financially responsible, for responsibility is a hallmark of freedom itself in the long run, and be independent of these massive entities. You are not a slave to a massive complex. It's because you believe you are that you become victimized by this complex. If you break free from that victimization and look out for yourself and those around you and do good things for others and not get involved in other people's affairs when they do not wish for you to be involved, then everything will be very peaceful. Everything will be great. There will always be bad people, but at least you don't have a massive complex that's killed millions of people, democide, homicide, all these horrible sides.
Governmental sides.
Yeah, all these horrible things that we've seen over and over again. then you won't have these massive complexes that have done everything in their power forever to ensure that peace doesn't exist, as instability causes chaos, and out of chaos it comes a lot of people on their knees begging in servitude for the government to give them things and for the banking system to give them things. And as I mentioned before, shove you down a bottomless pit of debt. I mean, folks, when will we learn? Or are we going to go back and say, yeah, but those whiteys, or yeah, but those black guys? Stop. You are falling for the tricks, and we've seen it before. And if you want to be 100 trillionaire living on the street, barely able to have food, then by all means go the way of Zimbabwe. But folks, this is only going to repeat. It's only going to get worse. And if you don't do anything about it, it's going to affect you dramatically. And that's not okay. That's not okay for your children to have to deal with bread going up 500 times in inflation. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And we've seen it before. These bread lines, these massive centralized societies, they take away the guns, as they're doing in South Africa as well. It's already dangerous enough with the level of gun control. I mean, it just keeps piling up, and you keep giving more power to these massive entities that are making the problem worse in the first place. But who do you look for? The people that cause the problem to bring their solutions in, and those solutions create the problem. It just goes in a perpetual circle forever. When will we learn? John, as we kind of start to wrap this up, what do you think?
Well, I think South Africa is in a lot of problems. And of course, if you look at their M3 chart, it's starting to hockey stick as well. Lots of, debt that are being created, mass amounts. And then, of course, their unemployment rate is 27 point something %, Josh, which is like unbelievable. And it's actually way better and probably more real than you see in a lot of countries here, where I'm pretty sure it's 10, 12% instead.
But they hide it in the labor force participation rate.
They take you out when you have not wanted to look for a job after 60, 90 days. It's like, no, you're not unemployed anymore. You don't count anymore in the statistics. It's just typical academic bullshit that's happening in the world economy right now from these Keynesians that are trying to run and manage the economy like communist China is. Of course, it's going to fail miserably, your tactic again, because you haven't read the history books, it seems like. All of you have just read the recent, maybe like 100 years of, history from...
Not the viewer.
Yeah. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve PhDs or other PhDs all around the world. But what we got to understand is that South Africa needs to go and find their Krugerrands and, get their gold and silver Krugerrands and hide them and preserve their wealth. They need to protect themselves, and that's what they need to do. And, if it gets even worse, try to get out, because most productive people leave a collapsing economy way before it happens. We saw that in 2008. We had Greeks, we had Spanish, Portuguese, like running all across the world, trying to get away from all the calamity in their own country. Well, we're going to see that again in all these other new countries now. It's going to happen again. When is people going to learn that it's the corrupt politicians, the fake government, and their central bank that are running them into ruin, of course, together with the banksters in their economy?
Yeah, the very act of being a politician in the first place is corrupted, intrinsically. So, when it comes down to it, individuals must rule themselves. They must decentralize, which is a really important part to point out. And as I wrap this up, of course, look to things like food, water, shelter, self-defense, even though I know it's difficult for you in South Africa right now with the crackdown, but self-defense, you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Of course, gold and silver as wealth insurance. Protect your purchasing power, folks. This isn't investment advice. This is simply my opinion, but look at history. Insurance is an investment. Insurance is a way that you can ensure that your money, your quote-unquote money, I should say, your rand, isn't going to be worth absolutely nothing soon enough. Currency. And of course, looking at things like cryptocurrencies, decentralized ones, of course, the ones that have true fundamental value, not the ones that are just built up on speculation. Do your own due diligence. It's really important. It's life-changing if you know what you're doing, but you have to know what you're doing. So again, do your own due diligence and look into these things before you just throw a whole bunch of currency into them. Anyway, with that said, thanks for going into this with us, John. I'm sure we'll be reporting on this again soon, because this doesn't seem to be giving in anytime soon. So anyway, until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as they bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, you know, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.